There's always one you forget, isn't there? I spent all that time trying to think of something for a mid-month video and there was another remake staring me right in the bloody face. Maybe it's best I left Leisure Suit Larry in the land of the lounge lizards until last, come to think of it, not only because it's hard to say, but because there's 3 different versions of this game as opposed to the usual 2. We've got the original parser interface version from 1987, the VGA remake that came 4 years later, and Leisure Suit Larry Reloaded, a full HD remake which was kickstarted by Replay Games, released 12 years after the first remake. And technically the overall plot was lifted wholesale from an earlier Sierra text adventure game called Soft Porn Adventure, but I'm gonna skip over that one because we'll never get done otherwise. That's Roberta Williams in the hot tub, by the way. In fact, I'm going to skip over the original EGA version as well, because EGA and VGA sound way too similar, but also because I imagine anyone who's desperate to play with a parser interface has probably already played this or isn't interested. Between that, the unforgiving difficulty and the PC speaker sound, it's a hard sell when a modern interpretation is available. I'll bring up 1 or 2 interesting things from the pre-1991 version, since a remake is a great opportunity to refix everything you screwed up the first time, but I'll mainly focus on the 2 later ones. To be clear, I'll be referring to them as the original, the VGA version, and Reloaded from now on, okay? So first up we have the age verification, which asks you questions only an adult should know the answer to. Specifically an American adult from 1987. Well, they updated it for the VGA version, but same problem pushed to 1991. Admittedly, I can't think of a good alternative. Bear in mind the first 2 versions came out before the ESRB was created, so there were no real restrictions in place aside from Scout's Honour basically, but it's not aged well no matter what version it is. That said, I'm not entirely sure you can fail it in Reloaded, either that or it is insanely generous with the number of failures. If it's the former, that's probably the best way of implementing it. Keep it as a wee nostalgia trip and nothing else. Yes, that was footage of me getting past the quiz by repeatedly clicking on the first answer. Once in the game proper, I was intrigued that Reloaded still had the same list of verbs. Walk, look, use, talk, mouth, and zipper. I shouldn't be surprised, I've seen Allo's Twitter account. Granted, Reloaded feels very smooth compared to the VGA version, noticeably so. This could be the speed at which your interface elements appear, the animations might be more fluid and detailed, or it could be the fact that Reloaded runs at 60 FPS as opposed to, I don't know, 20? 30 at most? Definitely less anyway. The verbs actually highlight one of the few advantages a parser interface has. Early on, you learn a password that you need to repeat to someone. In the original parser version, you would type out the password when prompted. In all subsequent versions, the password is represented as an inventory item. I don't know if the SCI engine was set up to allow text input during gameplay, but I don't think asking the player to type 1 sentence is too much to ask. I mean, it's literally a piece of text as an inventory item, it's weird. Mind you, Reloaded adds some logic by having Larry write the password down. In blood. Bleh. Maybe the dev team wanted an all-mouse interface. That would explain why there's no keyboard shortcuts for verbs either. They also added a verb wheel which pops up when you click and hold the left mouse button. I expected this to select a new verb for me, but instead it uses whatever verb you pick on whatever you were hovering the cursor over on when you brought up the wheel in the first place. Also weird. So we've got a smoother feeling game, but how does it look? Like this. Yeah, that was lame, but if you're not into that kind of cheesy humour, this really isn't the game series for you, fair warning there. The animation looks extremely smooth and detailed until you look at anything that isn't Larry's walk cycle. Most characters move about as smoothly as their VGA counterparts, with the occasional indulgence for Larry's potential lady partners, who can still look like they're gliding, unfortunately. That and the art style can look a little inconsistent at times. Not so much with the close-ups versus the game world. It's a different screen, I can cope with it. I'm talking about the set of faces which are quite clearly cartoons and a set of faces which are more comic book. Extra definition on the faces rather than outright caricatures. Only worth a wee mention though, it's not exactly Uncanny Valley material. You also got the death sequences in all their glory? Certain deaths will show Larry being revived by a mad scientist instead, nodding to the VGA release where your dead Larry was blended and reconstituted into a new Larry, nodding to the original which they built a new Larry and sent it back out. You'll notice I circumvented a dirty pun by not using the word resurrection at any point. Wait, shit. Unlike in previous versions, untimely deaths in Reloaded will usually pop you back to where you died, progress intact, rather than making you restart the entire goddamn game. Again, probably the best way of doing those point-and-click deaths, and their cartoonish nature fits well into what is primarily a comedy game. Oh, that was funny, that's clearly not the right path, let's try something else. It works. Given how notorious Sierra games were for killing you to bits or making the game unwinnable, pro tip, pick up the ribbon before you leave that room, it's nice to see the acknowledgement that maybe forcing the player to restart was not the best thing. Why they didn't learn that lesson from when they did it in Pepper's Adventures in Time is unknown. And speaking of designers changing their minds, Reloaded alters a couple of puzzles from the first 2 incarnations. Turns out certain people are rather keen to change puzzles that they've hated for 25 years. Who knew? One thing they didn't get tired of, clearly, is gambling. Like Space Quest before it, gambling is an essential component to obtaining enough cash to get your end away. Nope, not like that. Actually, kind of like that, but the game doesn't count it. It depends how you solve that puzzle. Point is, if you are worried about playing through the same old puzzles with a mere facelift, there's a little plus for you. But if you don't want to sit at the blackjack table safe scumming your fingertips off, then bad news. At least the absolute nonsense of a $20 bet limit and a $250 limit on winnings was left behind with the original version. Considering you need hundreds of dollars to complete the game, that dragged it out considerably. The biggest of the puzzle changes, pun not intended, but acknowledged as thematically appropriate, boobies, is probably Jasmine. As an entirely new character brought about by a Kickstarter goal, she brings the total number of in-game ladies from 3 to 4. That's if you don't count your interactions with casino receptionist Faith, which I'm clearly not doing. That's like 5 minutes of playtime at most. This new lady basically constitutes a fetch quest, more or less on the par of the other ladies in the game, and about as obtuse as those original puzzles too. Thankfully, there's a bunch of in-game hints to help you, and the dev team gains bonus points by presenting said hints as suspiciously self-referential jokes. That appealed to me more than a clinical "maybe you do this" message would have done. But the biggest overall change Reloaded brings is full voice acting. An improvement over the occasional sound effects in the VGA version, and a major improvement over the PC speaker bloopies of the original. Amazing what you can do when you're not constricted by the storage space of floppy disks. I'm not going to go ahead and call the voice acting good, but it absolutely fits the game. Larry sounds like Larry, which makes sense because they brought the same guy back from games 6 and 7, and everyone else fits the characters they're playing in a slightly exaggerated way. Stereotypical blonde bimbo, half comatose drunk guy, dangerously racist portrayal of an Asian shopkeeper, etc, etc. And while we're on the biggest things, I have to bring up my biggest gripe with Reloaded, and that would be the £15 price tag. Granted, this is a very professional job that's been done here, and it can't have been cheap, but for the length of game you get, it seems a bit much. When you remind yourself that this remake came out 3 years ago, it's even worse. I would wait for a sale if you're thinking about grabbing this. Whilst Reloaded plays smoother, looks better, and does a lot less to screw over the player for wrong choices, the VGA version still has a lot of charm, and the pack it sold in contains the first 6 games for half the price of Reloaded. If you want to play this game, Reloaded is good if it's on sale, otherwise a little bit overpriced. For more thrifty gamers, the VGA version is a perfectly good representation if you don't mind big ass pixels, and you can cope with the save early, save often mantra. Also, no voice acting.